Welcome to J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me on this artistic adventure. Today we'll be working with charcoal. So you'll need your number 2 or HB pencil, a kneaded eraser, and use your oldest, rattiest kneaded eraser. This charcoal has a tendency to mess up a kneaded eraser. And a piece of charcoal, anything you'd like. You'll need a cotton swab for blending. And let's get started. So there's lots of different charcoals, lots of things that you can get. This is a charcoal pencil that you unravel. It's got paper on it, so you never really sharpen it. It's just a piece of charcoal in there. You can also get vine charcoal. Vine charcoal is parts of a tree that they actually put in a kiln and they heat it up. They don't let it combust, otherwise it'll burn. And they just heat it so hot that it becomes charcoal. So there's the vine charcoal. I prefer the pencils. We're going to start drawing with our number 2 pencil. The reason for that is charcoal is very difficult to erase. And so as you're drawing with charcoal, it kind of grinds into the surface and it's hard to get rid of. So I'm going to hold my kneaded eraser in this hand. And when you want to clean your kneaded eraser, this is what you do. You pull it apart like this. I'm going to set my cotton swabs aside, and I'm going to set my charcoal aside for now too. What I want to do is, again, with this number 2 pencil, I'm going to use the side of the pencil, just like I showed you last time. Simple shapes, and you're going to use your elbow and your shoulder. A good composition is where your subject matter comes close to or touches 3 of the 4 sides of your paper. So for this, I want to leave a little bit more space up in here. So where his mouth is and everything, I want to leave a little bit more space up there. So I'm going to just block it off. I'm just going to say, that's about where I want his mouth to go. Leave yourself a little bit more space than your scrap. But I want his back side to be right up next to that. So already you can kind of get a vision of where you want this to go. I might move this over just a little bit. Maybe I'll move that over just a little bit and say I want his head to be about right in here somewhere. And his little nose to be up in there. Notice I went from small to bigger. So that circle just represents his head. And then he's got an ear that's back in there. Just as this curve kind of curves down there, there's a triangle right there for his ear. You can just triangle that out. And his little mouth is like a little rectangle. There's 2 little rectangles, one right there, and one kind of at an angle right there. Okay. And then his body is this kind of oval, this kind of bean shape. Put that in there right there. And the chest comes about the edge of that circle right there. So I'm going to move that over just a little bit. There's his chest. His neck then attaches onto that. And then his legs are just these little sausages. I'm just going to kind of go and say, there's a little sausage right there. There's one right here. There's one that comes out here. Another curve there. And this one you can see his little paw. His little paw is just a little circle there. This one has a little paw too, but it's hard to see because it's on the rock. There's a leg in the background, but it's going to be difficult to see too. I think we'll just throw that in with some shading. We won't even worry about the leg in the back. In the back of your mind, I hope that you're thinking this too, is I'm not going to draw a hard edge line around things. Look how fuzzy and soft his back is. We're going to use our cotton swab to get all that fuzzy. The only place you have a really hard edge is maybe around the bottom of his mouth right there, and maybe around his eye and his nose. That's about the only places that you have real hard edges. Everything else is really soft and fuzzy. So we're going to allow our cotton swab to get that little fuzzy soft part. He's got a little tail too that's sticking out there. It's actually going off the page. But we won't worry about that. Now what I want to do, once I've got established my size that I want, now I can add some shading with my pencil. I can get in like where the eye goes. If you go straight down from the nose, if that nose is in the right place. If it isn't, you can change it, you can alter it, you can adjust it. Remember to draw it first and then erase it. If you erase it first and then redraw it, you lose your point of reference. And all of a sudden, you'll draw it wrong again. So the eye, if you come straight off that nose, there's a little triangle right there. And it kind of goes down to the middle of his ear. That ear needs to be a little bigger. So make that ear a little bit bigger. There's the center part of the ear. And I'm not worried if it doesn't look quite like it either. I can always adjust it. I can add any darks that I've got at this point. And I'm just using the side of my pencil to add those things in. Some of those edges are lost. I mean, like right here on his chest there, it looks like it blends into the background. Right here where his head is, blends into the background. So that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. All this is doing is getting our proportions correct. As we look through it and we go, okay, it's about right. It's in about the right place. Because all this is going to go anyway, eventually. And if it bothers you, take your kneaded eraser and get rid of it. Normally, you wouldn't need to get rid of it because we're going to be smearing everything anyway. So, but it's up to you. If it bothers you, get rid of it. So once you establish it, you kind of figure out where everything goes, and it's in about the right place. Then you want to move over to your charcoal, because this is just preliminary stuff. Everything we've drawn here, because we're drawing with the side of our pencil, it erases easily, very fast to draw. And it's just going to all blend in. It's all going to go away anyway. So there's no reason really to erase it, unless you want to. Unless it's bothering you a little bit, then you can erase things, but it's not a big deal. So then what we want to do is with our charcoal, I'm going to go in and pick out the darkest areas, the darkest places that there is. Like where his mouth is, around his nose, his eye. There's just small areas, but right behind his ear right there is quite dark. If I take the side of my pencil and I just go in with it, and just in the direction that the hair flows, I can do these little feathered lines. And a feathered line is where you kind of drop your pencil in and you give it a little flick, 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 flick. And you can turn it down, you can turn it up, because hair kind of flows that way. And that'll give it a nice, soft, fuzzy edge. It'll look like hair. What you do inside isn't probably as important. I can just go like this and just blend that. But the edges are important with that feathered line. So any place that you see some darkness, I want to go ahead and just throw that in the side of your pencil. And if you want it to look like fur, use that feathered line. Flick, flick, flick. You can do that with the side of your pencil, or you can do it with your tip as well. And that ear, there's a dark edge that goes around the ear. So I'm just going to use a little feathered line. And rather than draw the line around it, I'm just going to draw little flecky things like this. Just little ones. Because that looks like fur. Little hair on there. On the inside of his ear, that's kind of very long fur too. You can do the same thing. because it's the edges that are most important. Even human hair, when you're drawing human hair, edges are the most important ones there. You go back and forth. Anything that's dark. And if it's not, just leave it out. So like this little edge on his brow right here, just leave it out. When in doubt, leave it out. His eye has an interesting shape. I'm going to zoom into it, see if we can get in there and see what's going on. This picture might be a little bit on the grainy side when it gets in, but you can see some of those little dark areas. So instead of drawing just a darkness in there, I'm going to just draw a little edge. A little edge there. In fact, let me zoom into mine. See what I'm doing. There we go. A little dark edge in the bottom, a little corner in the corner of the eye, a couple little shines. We're going to leave those out. And voila, that's it. That's all you need. Because we're going to blend it. We can always come back in and add more too later on. There's some little tiny feathered lines there. The closer you are down the nose, the shorter the fur is. So your line gets a little softer. Again, don't draw lines around everything. All those little lines that we've got in there, we're going to get them. We're going to take them out. In fact, a lot of those we don't need. They take care of themselves. So you can get rid of that. That's not a problem. And then here's his nose. His nose kind of curves down just a little bit. There's a little nostril there. The head is the most important part. That's what people are looking at. So if you can get the head, if you can nail that, everything else will fall into place. And remember, we still want to blend some of this. So any place that's a little darkness, just throw that in there. It's interesting, you look at this and almost hear the sound that he's making. Around the front of his chin, it's very light. So I'm just going to squirrel away some little darkness inside the chin, leaving out some areas because there's some light areas in there. And it's not important where, but just that you do that. And if you got some imagination, you can see the edge of his chin right there. And when we get it with our cotton swab, you'll see it. Here's underneath that chin, there's a little dark triangle right there. And then the rest of it's just fur. And again, I'm going to just lightly put this in with those feathered lines, trying to go in the direction that the hair flows. And it's not important, it's exactly where it goes. Everybody's hair is a little different, but if you can be close, it's going to look better. And again, I'm not worried about that edge over there. It'll take care of itself. Just need a few hair here and there. A few more little spots and I'll be ready to blend. The head, that's our emphasis area. That's where most people are looking. So if you can get the head done, the rest of it will go fast. Because you're not worried about all the little details, all the little fine print things. And all that gray that we've got in there, we can put in with our cotton swab. Some of that light area we can take out with our kneaded eraser, and we've got it. And we might have to go back in and add some more here and there. Just little zigzags. Remember to leave your edges nice and soft and fuzzy. Now I'm going to go in with my cotton swab, and I'm going to just grab some of the darker areas and take some of that out of there and put them in some of the lighter gray areas. So, for example, if I start in with this chin right here, I can kind of move some of that out. I can bring it out this way. Bring it out this way. Look how soft and fuzzy that is. That's what you want. You want it nice and soft and fuzzy. And you don't have to press very hard. You can just take it very softly. Again, you can always add more later on. Some of it you can just press on and just do a little fuzzy kind of press. That'll get it too. Because you want to keep some of that texture in there as well. So now I'm just going to take my cotton swab and just a little here and there. And once you load it on there, look how I can draw with that cotton swab and how soft it becomes. Now I can draw with my cotton swab, even little wrinkles and things like that I can put in there. And if I go in the direction that the hair flows, it'll look kind of like fur. Again, I'm not just randomly going over it. I can just take my cotton swab and just touch it a little bit. There might be places that you need to go over it really heavily, but right here where the fur is, it does take a little bit of practice. This is not something that comes naturally. We talked about that. There's a question in the creative process about everyone is born with creative skills. The correct answer to that is false. We're all born with the ability to be creative, but the skills we have to learn. So that blending of it really makes it soft and fluffy. And when you got enough on your cotton swab, you can take that on your edges especially, and you can just do these little blended kind of whippy lines, those little feathered lines. And look how soft you can get those little furs to come out. You do that out the backside too. Very soft. Again, once you nail the head and you get it down so it looks really good, the body is just going to take care of itself. Remember, your edges are important, so I can just scribble through the body, and on those edges I do those little feathered lines. When you're doing paws, don't worry about the little paws. Just do the little spaces in between, the little dark areas. And then we'll blend that with the cotton swab and you'll get the pause. It'll come through. Again, don't worry about it. Trust yourself. That back leg, you can see it back in there. It's just dark, so I'm just going to throw that in, leaving that soft fuzzy edge there. I'm going to throw in some of these shadows just because they help define that area. And it becomes rock or ground or background. Just going to throw them in. Now I can go back in with my cotton swab and blend all that. Remember, your edges, they're most important. I can soften those edges. The rest of it, you just kind of blend it. I can pull out some charcoal from one area and put it in others. So again, if you think of this kind of like painting with dry media, your cotton swab becomes your brush. And from here on out, it's just add a little bit, blend it, smear it, add a little more, blend it, smear it. And when you get to that point, you want to do like more rock and stuff in the background, use your cotton swab. You can go back in there and just say, oh, there's a rock right there. And there's something over there. I have no idea what that is. But if you want to put some of that in there, you're more than welcome to. And if you want to leave it out, that's probably fine too. Sometimes you need a little bit of ground just to give a context of where that object is, what it's doing. So you can add some of that to the background if you want to. I can also take my kneaded eraser and pinch it down to a knife blade, and I can come back in and take out some little spaces, just little flecky spaces to give it some more feeling of fur and to lighten up certain little areas. Some areas I maybe went a little too dark. It's never going to take it out completely, but it will also leave that texture in there. And you kind of want that texture as well. Like his little tooth. Kind of want that little tooth in there. So I can go back in and just pull that out just a little bit. So that kneaded eraser really can make it look very photographic. Because that's all you're dealing with. It's just shapes of dark and light. Even the eye, if you get too much into the eye and you think, darn it, I wish I could lighten it up, just pinch your kneaded eraser down, just give it a little touch. Pull some of that back out. So from here on out, it's just kind of a back and forth between your kneaded eraser, the cotton swab, charcoal. You can add as much as you want. It's harder to take things out. So just be careful with that. I go back in with some feathered line in this back fur just to add that texture to make sure it looks like fur. So I'm just going to go back in with a little feathered line, little sweeping motions. As you do, try to avoid touching your drawing. I know we get so used to planting our hand on it that it's really tough. If that is too difficult, switch over to this mode because it's a lot easier to keep from touching your drawing when you're up above it. We didn't have to draw lines around anything. It's just takes care of itself. So get out of the habit of drawing lines around things. Your little guy will be just fine. Here's a little pause. I'm not drawing pause. I'm just doing the little shades of dark and light. And the pause will come through. Look at the shapes of dark and light. Just draw those. Last thing you want to do is just make sure there's plenty of darks in there. Those darks are what makes it pop. It's what makes it really stand out. We call that contrast. In our values, lots of darks and lots of lights, and you got it. And if you need some ground lines, you need something down there. It's not necessarily that you need the ground, but you need to show that he's not floating. Nobody wants to see a floating wolf. That's a little disconcerting. So you need something down there. The last thing you want to do is you want to sign it. Your signature should be part of your composition. So what I do, sometimes I'll put my finger out and go, okay, where can I put that signature that'll look good? I suppose you could put it down here, but for me, I'd probably put it right over there somewhere. And that's part of your composition. Take your kneaded eraser and just clean up anything. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Hope charcoal is not going to scare you. Hope you had fun. And I hope somehow this has made your life a little bit nicer.